Charles by A.J. Allen. I expect most of you know Piccadilly Circus. Well, I was walking through it one night after the theatre, and in the middle there was a taxi with a crowd of people round it. Apparently a perfectly good accident. I was just making up my mind whether to go and have a look or not, when a tall man came barging out of the crowd, dragging a half-fainting woman after him. When he got nearer, I saw he was a man I knew called Charles. The moment he spotted me, he said, "Saints alive, it's AJ! What wonderful luck! Will you look after Margaret and take her home?" He told me that they were in the taxi, and that they'd just run over a woman. She might be dead, and he'd got to stay and see to things. Anyway, he heaved Margaret at me and plunged back into the crowd again. Margaret, I may tell you, was very smart and very pretty. I supported the good lady across the pavement and propped her up against the wall of the Criterion. She was shaking all over and sagging at the knees, and looked like doing a complete flop at any moment. She kept on moaning, "Poor thing, I'm sure we've killed her." And I kept on saying, Come, there. It was only an accident, and in any case you weren't driving." But she was rather a job. However, after 2 or 3 minutes she began to pull herself together, and I said, "What about a taxi so that I can take you home?" And she said, "My God, no! I shall never get into a taxi again after this." Still, she told me that she lived quite near, and where it was, so we decided to walk. I was rather glad that it was so near, because frankly, it wasn't the sort of address I should have liked to give a taxi-man at that time of night. By and by, before we left the scene of the accident, I forced my way into the crowd to inquire after the victim. Luckily, she'd not been really hurt at all. She was standing up between 2 bobbies, with her hat on one side, telling everyone why she'd wanted to cross the road, and no one wanted to know, because she was no chicken. I rejoined Margaret on the pavement, and we started off along Coventry Street. On the way she told me her name, and then I remembered who she was. She was married to a Polish violinist of the name of Jaworski, and they didn't hit it off very well. I also remembered that she'd once been pointed out to me as a friend of Charles. Anyway, they are married now and live very happily out in New Zealand. Mind you, I didn't know Charles at all well, and I hadn't seen him for ages. He was the sort of man one loses sight of altogether for years at a time, but who crops up again.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?